I'm back again for another just one layer cake quilt. Well, sort of just one layer cake. It's not really just one layer cake because I am adding some more fabrics, but it's mostly one layer cake. This fabric, I fell in love with it. It reminds me of camping from when I was a kid in Girl Scout camp. I love the prints. I think it's so cute. It's called The Great Outdoors. I'll put all of the information, of course, on my blog, in the description, all of that wonderful stuff too, and here on the screen so you can see who makes this. I also got this fabric as a backing. Look at this, isn't it pretty? Very fall-like, but it's gonna be perfect for this camping quilt. And I got black as sashing strips. That's a little extra that we're gonna be adding along with some cornerstones. And the cornerstone fabric, oh, look at this. Now I know you saw a piece of it on top here, but I got some yardage of it. I want to fussy cut those little animals out for the cornerstones. Won't that be cute? I will show you how to do all of that, of course. And I just want to thank Missouri Star Quilt Company for sending me all this stuff so I can share this with you. All of the information is below on all the products that I have. And of course, there's an affiliate link as well where you can get a discount on your order and support my channel all at the same time. All right, so I'm going to start by pressing these fabrics out. I am not going to starch them this time. Usually I do, but I'm not, because I'm not going to starch my 10-inch squares. So I don't want to mix starched with non-starched fabrics. We're going to just go non-starched the whole way. On the screen now you'll see a supply list of all the stuff that I'm using for this quilt. Make sure you pause, take a screenshot, take a picture, jot it down, something. But I also have all of this information on my website, of course, and below, and everywhere else that I would keep all of that information. I'm also going to cut out all my sashing strips now, get them all ready to go, but I'm going to wait to do the fussy cutting because I want to show you exactly how to do that, and then we'll start making this quilt. I'm going to cut this using my AccuQuilt because it's going to be quick and easy, but you can use a ruler and rotary cutter, whatever you'd like. Remember, they need to be 1.5 inches, so they're 1 inch finished. All right, I'm going to get started. Can't wait to make this one. Okay, here it is. Here's the fabric. Let's take a peek at it. Oh my goodness, look at this. Look at this fabric. How cute. I love the little campsites. Oh, and these have little camping motifs all over it, and the plaids, and it's so pretty. I love it so much. And I'm gonna just pull one of these out. Let me see, one that's gonna show up really good on camera. Let's go with this one. I'm gonna move these aside. I also grabbed a mat and a 10-inch ruler. All of these kits that we get, these layer cakes or pre-cuts, they don't always follow the same rules. And you can see that there's a pinked edge on most of these. In fact, I think all of them except for batiks have a pinked edge. The question always is, do you line everything up at the tip of the peak or the valley of the peak? And what I always like to do is take a ruler and check to see where this manufacturer cut them. And it looks like it's on the inside of the peak. So I'm gonna go through all of these and cut off that peak. For me, it makes sense because then I don't even have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. This one definitely hangs over a tiny bit all the way around. So I'm gonna chop it off. And to do that, I'm just gonna hold it. Whoops, it already moved. I'm gonna hold it real nice and secure and cut around it. I have a small enough mat that I can move that mat as I cut. And to cut around it, I'm just going to hold it nice and secure and carefully cut around. We use every one of these layer cakes in this quilt, so you'll want to be careful that you don't have a miscut. It makes a big difference with piecing, even though it's a teeny tiny amount. I just finished cutting all of these down, and I know it's an extra step, but to me it's worth it. It is a little messy too. If you don't have a 10-inch ruler, however, you can still use a regular ruler as long as it's 10 inches or larger, and just line up the lines and trim, then turn your block and trim the other side. That works well too. Next, we're gonna cut down those long strips that we have, the 1.5 by the width of fabric, which is around 42 inches. I'm going to show you how I do that. I have a few tricks. I do like to do them 2 at a time, but you'll see that. After we're done cutting all the strips down, we are going to then fussy cut. I'll show you how I do that to get all these little tiny motifs. They're so cute. Let's do it. Here are my 25 strips that I have cut already. They're 1.5 inches. I'm just going to take one of these, and you can see they're folded just like they are when they come off the bolt. I did make sure they were straight. All right, so I'm going to lay it down folded like this with the fold side here. I'm going to take my ruler. Now, I could just take a 10-inch ruler like this, line it up, make sure everything is straight, and cut on both sides. But I know not everybody has a 10-inch ruler, so I'm going to show you how to do it with a regular ruler. Okay, I want to make sure that these are nice and flat and together. And I like to cut from the folded side just because I don't have to worry about the ends then. I'm going to line this up, and I use my ruler to make sure the top is straight and the bottom of that is straight. And then I just have a teeny tiny bit hanging over here. I also have my mat flipped over because then it doesn't mess me up with the lines. And I'm just going to cut this off. If you have to turn it around, that's okay too. All right, next I'm going to move it to my 10-inch mark. Again, I'm going to line everything up. Make sure it's straight, make sure it's flat, make sure it's lined up. So I'm looking at these lines and I'm looking at that 10-inch line, and then I cut. And there are 2 of the, 97, I think, strips that we need like this. And I just keep going. This is great to do in front of the TV or something. Now we already know that this end here is cut. So all we have to do is line up our 10-inch mark, line up the strip, and cut. This part is waste. So you'll get 4 10-inch strips out of your fabric, the width of fabric. And you just keep going and do them all. All right, let's talk about cutting these motifs out. And this can be tricky, and everybody has their own way of doing it. For me, I like to cut out the area, and then I'll go in and fussy cut the actual motif. So I have a template here that I know this is the size I need. And if I were to use just this to cut it, I would line that up. But I'm not going to. I'm going to cut out something like this. It uses up a little bit more fabric, but for me, it allows me to then cut things down to the right size and not worry about it. So I'm going to cut out around this. This can be rough. You don't have to be exactly perfect. At this point, I'm going to center my motif on his face. And you can see that I have a 1/4 inch marked around this 1.5 inch area. And I just marked this, by the way, with a wet erase so it won't come off when you rub it. I want to make sure that I have enough seam allowance around this guy that it's not going to cut off his face. So I line it up like this, and then I'll cut around it. You can also use washi tape and cut out your design, your pattern here. And this is my 1.5 inch square. Or if I can find it, you can use a template that's 1.5 inches, which I happen to have. So I'm going to show you how to do it with just a ruler, just like this. And all you're going to do is cut around these 2 sides. This works best with a rotating mat, but a small mat will do too. Just turn this, line it up at that 1.5 inch mark. And now you have a 1.5 by 1.5 fussy cut piece of fabric. Isn't this cute? So you're going to make, I think, 56 of these. I think that's how many we do. 56 of these of all the different motifs. And you can see there's a whole bunch of little motifs. We got a fox and a little raccoon. You could cut out these little squares that have like great views written on it, all kinds of different things, anything you want, or none at all. You can also just use regular fabric for your cornerstones. That works too. But I'm gonna have some fun cutting these little guys out, and I'll meet you back here and start assembling. It's all cut. I have all the strips done. They're here somewhere. Where'd I put them? Here they are, on my tray. Right here, all of the strips. I also have my squares cut. They're in this little basket because they get all over the place. And I found some really cute motifs. I even did some little tails of the animals. You can just have some fun with this because it's just a cute little touch, but I think it's going to make a huge difference in this quilt. I, of course, have all of the blocks done like I showed you. So it is now time to assemble. Our first step is to sew these strips onto these squares. When you do this, you want to make sure that any of the directional prints are in the right direction. I think there's really only 1 or 2 prints that are directional, but it's still worth mentioning. So you can see this. This one is definitely directional. Some of the others are what they call tossed, because no matter which way you put them, there's some that are upside down, some that are not, which is a wonderful thing to look for in directional fabrics because you don't have to worry about that. We are going to sew one of these strips to each of the blocks, and you're going to sew to the right side of the block. We're going to do that for all 42 of them. This will make sense in the next step when we put things together. But again, you want to make sure that any directional prints are facing the right side up with the strip on the right side. I did 2 just to show you what I'm talking about. We're going to do all of these and then we will be laying it out on the design board. Now, you know how I love to batch sew. I'm also going to sew my sashing strips that go between the rows together too. And you can see that here. So this is one of the little fussy cut squares. Whoops, that's upside down. Hold on. One fussy cut square, and then there's the strip, and the fussy cut square, and the strip, and you're gonna make these 2. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these 10-inch by 1.5-inch strips with these at the end and in between. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the little squares too. So we're gonna make 8 of these long strips. And then we'll be able to lay it out and start to at least envision what this quilt will look like. Then we'll add the other strip. It'll all come together really quickly. Let's do it. Okay, these are all done. You can see them here. And I have this to the right side. And I think that's right on the camera, right? I'm looking at it this way. Yes, the right side. I get so mixed up when it's backwards. So it is on the right side. And they are all finished. You can see them here. I'll hold one up just so you can see what I mean. And the pressing is towards the dark, towards the sashing. So I pressed everything towards that. Then I ran into a problem because this quilt is a lot bigger than my design board. And I still don't have a big design board on my wall. I will someday, but I don't yet. So I had to kind of lay it out in batches, or I would have shown you that part. But before I laid it out, because I was doing it in batches, I decided to make a map or color in my original map here. And I figured out how many background colors of each fabric. So let's see, there were 9 green, 5 red, all of that. So I added them in. I just used colored pencils and colored it in. And I started with the least amount. So I think the red had 5. Is that right? Yeah, 5. So I spread them out. So I knew that they would be distributed, and then I worked up. So the next one was 8 colors in the browns. So I added the browns, and then I kept going and going and going. Ones that aren't colored in are the white or off-white background. This gave me a guide since I couldn't lay it all out together. And then I laid it out in sections and took pictures and then made sure that they went together. So if you have a small space, don't have a design board, don't have a big enough design board like me, this is always a great tip. After I laid it out, I put them into packets. So you can see that here. So here is my first set. This is row 1. I have one for each row, each of the 7 rows. And I'm going to sew them together, and they're laid out. So this is the top fabric, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way across. Now, because we sewed just to the right side, we also have to sew a 10-inch strip to the left side of that row too. So we have 10-inch strips on each side. Hopefully that makes sense. Once you see the full strips, it will make sense. So I'm going to sew these rows together, and I'll meet you back when the rows are done so you can see them. And then we'll put the sashing strips that have the little pieces between it. They should nest because everything's been pressed to the black fabric. Oh, one more thing, thread color. If you're using black fabric, use black thread, especially if you're using a solid. Black is the one color that will show through, like if you use a light gray or even a dark gray, you can kind of see the stitches. Black thread works best on black fabric. Wait, was there something else I was going to tell you? Oh, I know what it was. If you're using a print, you're going to make sure it's right sides together when you're sewing it. I think that's pretty clear. As us as quilters, we know that. If you're using a solid like I did, it doesn't matter. Both sides are the same. All right, so I'm going to get to sewing these stacks together, getting the rows together, and then I'll meet you back here to see the rows and then I'll show you how I'm gonna nest everything together and get this quilt top done. Yay! Okay, they are all done. They are here, or most of them are here, because I'm gonna show you what we do next, which is add these. These are the strips that go between the rows. What's really nice is because we press to the black fabric, everything's going to nest. So I'm just gonna pin a whole lot as I go through this, and you can see how I just make sure that those seams are flat, that my little characters are going the right direction, and place it right sides together and pin along that, and then sew that together. And you'll see when it's all finished, it looks like this for each row. By the time you're done, you'll have all these little pieces sewn in, and then you can sew your rows together and your whole quilt top will be done. When I have a lot of rows in a quilt, I like to wrap them around these comic book boards because it keeps them all nice and neat and flat. It usually works out really well. Depends on the size, but typically I don't do much bigger than a 10-inch. I guess if I do 12, I could cut a piece of poster board, but that's the way I do it. And then I put a clip on it to tell me which row it is, making sure that the clip is at the top. That way when I sew them together, it's a little bit easier to come back to them and do that, especially if I have to stop working on a project and put it away because of other obligations and come back to it. Just a tip. The quilt top is done. Oh my goodness, I love it. It's so pretty. I love those little animals in the corners. Oh, it's so cute. I can't wait to quilt this and get this finished. And I need your help with that. What would you do? Would you send it to a long armor? I'm kind of thinking they might have a really cool pantograph with tents and stuff, which would be a lot of fun. Or I could do like a plaid straight line quilting. Could try free motion quilting, but I'm not that great at it yet. I don't know. Let me know how you would finish this. I love how it turned out. I think it's so cute and very campish. It reminds me of going camping when I was a kid, and I just love that part. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you take some time to sew, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.